430 horsepower, that's the number Chevrolet put on paper. It was a lie, on purpose. The real number was closer to 500 horsepower, sitting under a warning sticker that told you not to drive it on the street. Meanwhile, the NHRA was busy watching Chrysler's Hemi like a hawk. Nobody was watching the Corvette. That's not an accident, that's the whole scheme. General Motors had a corporate ban on factory racing since 1963. On paper, GM didn't build race cars anymore. So how do you build a race car when your own company says you can't? You bury it in the order guide, you underrate the horsepower, you scare off anyone who isn't serious. That's exactly what Chevrolet did with the L88. This is the story of the fastest lie Detroit ever printed on a spec sheet, and how it hid in plain sight while the NHRA chased a car everyone already knew was fast. Let's start with the engine itself. The L88 was a 427 cubic inch big block built from 1967 to 1969. Aluminum heads, a solid lifter cam, a Holley carburetor sized for a race car, not a grocery run. Compression ratio, 12.5 to 1. That's race fuel territory. Pump gas would detonate it. Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower. That number was fiction. Independent dyno tests from the era put the real figure between 480 and 560 horsepower, depending on tune. Chevy's own lower-rated 430 horsepower L71 tri-power engine, the one they were honest about, put out less real power than the L88 they were lying about. Why underrate your best engine? Insurance, corporate optics, and keeping it out of the hands of anyone who wasn't building a race car. Chevrolet made the L88 nearly impossible to order by accident. No radio, no heater, no power steering. It deleted comfort options most buyers wanted, on purpose. It required the M22 close ratio manual, the heaviest duty suspension, and a warning label that scared off casual buyers. The sticker literally said the car was not recommended for highway use. In 1967, only 20 units were built. In 1968, 80. In 1969, 116. 216 cars total across 3 years out of a production run of hundreds of thousands of Corvettes. That's not a mistake. That's a company hiding a weapon inside its own catalog. Now let's talk about the car everyone was watching. The 426 Hemi Chrysler's headline engine, and the one the NHRA built entire rulebooks around. Rated at 425 horsepower. Everyone knew that number was soft too, but nobody was hiding it. It was loud, it was famous, and it was on the cover of every magazine. That's the trap. The Hemi was so famous, the NHRA built classification rules specifically to manage it. Super stock classes, factory experimental categories, all built around Chrysler's engine because Chrysler made noise about it. Chevrolet made no noise about the L88 at all. While tech inspectors measured Hemi intake ports with calipers, the L88's real output sat undocumented in Chevrolet's own engineering files. This is the 40% mark. Here's the verdict, stated plain. The L88 Corvette was faster than its factory paperwork ever admitted, and it beat Hemi-powered cars in real quarter-mile competition while carrying a horsepower rating 70 points lower. Not a myth, not a bench racing story. Documented on time slips. The NHRA never caught it because the NHRA was watching horsepower claims, not dyno reality. Chevrolet exploited a blind spot built into the rulebook itself. Weight breaks and class rules in drag racing were assigned by advertised horsepower, not real horsepower. If your factory rating was low, you got placed in a lighter, less competitive class than your real performance deserved. That's not cheating on paper, that's cheating by paperwork. The L88 was underrated by roughly 70 to 130 horsepower, depending on which dyno sheet you trust. That's enough of a gap to shift an entire class assignment. Meanwhile, the Hemi, honest or not, was rated high enough that it never got that advantage. Chrysler's engine carried its fame like a target. Chevrolet's engine carried its lie like camouflage. Now let's put them on the same strip. 1968. A stock L88 Corvette against a stock Hemi Roadrunner, both running factory exhaust, factory tune. On paper, the Hemi should win easily. 425 claimed horsepower against a car claiming only 430. The lights drop. The L88 launches harder than its rating has any right to allow. 12.5 to 1 compression doesn't care what the brochure says. Quarter-mile times from period magazine tests put a well-tuned L88 in the low 11s, some reports crediting it into the high 10s. The Hemi Roadrunner, in comparable factory trim, ran in a similar window, sometimes slightly behind. A car rated 70 horsepower lower was running the same times, sometimes faster, than the engine the entire sport was built to police. That's the entire scandal in one paragraph. Car and Driver tested an L88 in 1969 and clocked it running the quarter mile in 11.2 seconds at a trap speed over 130 miles per hour. For a car Chevrolet claimed made 430 horsepower, that number should have been impossible. It wasn't impossible, it was accurate. Chevrolet's paperwork was the fiction, not the car. Chrysler engineers reportedly complained they knew something didn't add up, but there was no mechanism to challenge it. The NHRA rated cars by manufacturer claim, and Chevrolet's claim was low enough to never raise a flag. This is what going around corporate actually looks like. Not a factory race team, a warning sticker and a rigged number. GM's racing ban didn't stop Chevrolet from building a race car. It just forced them to disguise it as a bad idea for the street. The genius wasn't the engine. The engine was straightforward big block engineering. The genius was making the fastest car in the lineup look like the least desirable one on paper. That's not an engineering trick, that's a marketing con aimed directly at a sanctioning body. So here's the verdict, restated across 3 numbers. 1. The rated horsepower was 430. The real horsepower was closer to 500. 2. The quarter-mile times matched or beat the Hemi cars the NHRA built its entire rulebook to contain. 3. Only 216 L88s were ever built, and the sanctioning body never once flagged the discrepancy. The strip doesn't lie, the paperwork did. Now for the aftermath, because this story doesn't end at the finish line. By the early 1970s, insurance companies and emissions rules ended the horsepower wars entirely. The L88 was discontinued after 1969. The gross versus net horsepower scandal eventually forced the entire industry to re-rate every engine using real installed conditions starting in 1972. The L88's hidden numbers became one of the pieces of evidence that made regulators stop trusting factory claims altogether. Today, a numbers-matching 1969 L88 Corvette sells at auction for well over $500,000. Some verified cars crossing 1 million. Rarity built the myth, but the dyno sheets built the truth. And the truth was always faster than Chevrolet admitted. If you've ever seen an L88 run in person, or found one of these old time slips in a shoebox, tell us in the comments. That's the receipt that matters. Subscribe for the next verdict. So let's settle the real argument. Not Chevy versus the record book. Chevy versus the Hemi, on the strip, in the exact window that mattered. 1969. Both cars underrated on paper. Both cars murdering their factory numbers at the track. The Hemi was rated at 425 horsepower. Everyone knew it made more. Nobody disputes that. That's not the scandal. The scandal is the gap. Hemi's real number sat somewhere north of 450. The L88s sat past 500. That's not a rounding error. That's a different class of lie. On paper, the Hemi should walk it. Bigger cubic inches, bigger legend, bigger fear from every sanctioning body in the country. On the strip, in period, stock L88s ran mid-11s at over 127 miles an hour. Street tires, factory exhaust, no cheating required. The Hemi cars ran the same window, sometimes a tick faster off the line. Sometimes the L88 walked away at the top end because it carried less weight over the front wheels. That's the part Mopar guys don't want printed, weight distribution. The L88 put its horsepower down cleaner. 400 fewer pounds will do that. So here's the verdict. Head-to-head, stock for stock, 1969. The L88 wins more of these races than the folklore admits. Not every time. Nobody serious claims every time. But enough that the Hemi's reputation as the undisputed street king doesn't survive the time slips. NHRA never wanted this comparison made in public. Two factory-hidden horsepower figures racing each other, both underrated by the same institution for the same reason. Insurance companies read horsepower numbers, not dyno truth. So both manufacturers lied downward. And NHRA let the lie stand, because the lie kept both cars racing. That's the cover-up nobody puts in the title. It wasn't Chevrolet against Chrysler. It was both of them against Detroit's own insurance actuaries. Chevrolet just did it better. They didn't only underrate the number, they hid the car from the brochure entirely, so nobody outside the loop even knew to ask. 20 units in 67, 116 in 68, only 116 in 69, the final year. Fewer than 350 L88s ever built. Total. Compare that to the Hemi cars, built by the thousands across Roadrunners, Super Bs, and Chargers. Chrysler wanted the Hemi seen. Chevrolet wanted the L88 buried. That single choice, hide it or flaunt it, decided everything that came after. It decided the myth. It decided the money. It decided who tells this story today. Now walk into the legacy and aftermath, because this is where the L88 finally gets paid for what it always was. In 1990, an L88 was a strange, loud curiosity most collectors avoided. Rough engines, no power steering, no radio. People called it impractical. By 2014, a numbers-matching 1967 L88 sold at auction for $3.25 million. That's not a car anymore. That's a verdict, priced in dollars. Real Hemi superstock cars command serious money too. Don't misunderstand that. But the L88 broke the ceiling first, and broke it because of the very secrecy Chevrolet used to bury it. Scarcity became the asset. The thing built to disappear from the brochure became the thing collectors now fight over hardest, because disappearing was proof it was real. NHRA eventually rewrote its rulebook around exactly this problem, forcing manufacturers toward more honest power declarations through the 70s. The L88 didn't just win races, it helped break the whole ratings racket. That's the legacy that matters more than the auction price. A car built in secret forced an entire sport toward telling the truth about horsepower. Every muscle car mythbuster video that comes after this one owes something to that shoebox full of time slips. The paper never lied, only the brochures did. So the next time somebody tells you the Hemi was untouchable in 1969, you tell them about a car Chevrolet didn't even want in the catalog. 430 horsepower on paper, 560 under it. That gap is the whole story of this era, told in one engine. That's the verdict. Rarity built the legend, the Dyno built the proof, and the strip settled the argument nobody at NHRA wanted settled. See you at the next one.